Welcome to Rome. This is The Bittersweet Life with Katie Sewell and Tiffany Parks.
Hello and welcome to The Bittersweet Life. I'm Tiffany Parks in Rome. Katie is away this week, but we are joined by an old friend of mine, a special guest, Felipe Salles, joining us from Western Massachusetts, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, correct.
Before I go into our background, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell our listeners who you are.
Okay, well, I'm Felipe Salles. I'm a musician. I've been in the US since 1995, so I guess 31 years now. I'm originally from Brazil, and I teach at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. That's why I live in Western Mass. I used to live in Boston, then I moved to New York, and the last 16 years of my life I've spent here in Massachusetts, in the Western Mass area.
I can't believe it's been 16 years. So, for our listeners, Felipe and I go way back. I mean, we met, I want to say it was 1995 when we met.
Yeah,
As
yeah.
much as I hate to date myself that way, I shouldn't even have been alive in 1995, really, if you look at me. No, I'm just kidding. But we met, I know it was my first year as an undergrad, but you were in grad school. Is that right?
That's correct. It was my first year doing my master's. I was what you can call fresh off the boat.
Off the boat. So we met at New England Conservatory of Music, which is located in Boston, if you're not familiar. It's one of the most highly acclaimed conservatories in the US, if not the world. And you were studying, obviously, you were studying jazz saxophone. I say obviously, it's obvious for me, but not for our listeners. So you're studying jazz saxophone. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we came to know each other through my boyfriend at the time, Jonathan, because Jonathan was a big xenophile like myself. He loved people from different cultures. And so he quickly made friends with all the international students. And you were one of them. And I remember him telling me about you before I even met you and telling me and kind of doing an impression of you because he liked to do impressions. And he said, I need to go practice my patterns. That was what he said. And if you don't know, jazz musicians, apparently this was new to me as well, have to practice patterns for improvisation. So that's just a little nugget of my history with Felipe, but we became great friends. And we were friends all through undergraduate. And, we don't see each other as much as we'd like anymore because we live so far apart, but we're still friends. So that is just our personal connection. But I just want to talk to you about so many things because you are the opposite of me in a kind of sense. You moved from a country outside of the US to the US and established yourself there and made a life for yourself there. And I have done the opposite. I have left the United States and established myself in another country. So I'm sure there are some fun things and parallels and opposites to talk about. But I believe that you were also a listener of this show, if I'm not mistaken.
That's true. I started listening a few years back.
Ah,
I don't
okay.
know if it was during the pandemic or right after, but yeah, I discovered your podcast and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Let me listen to that. And I became more and more of a listener as time went by, I guess.
Oh, that's nice. That is nice to hear because I don't know, not that many of my friends listen, actually, strangely, unless they just don't tell me. So it is nice to hear that. So let's start with talking a little bit about when you arrived in the US. And A, did you think you were going to stay forever? And B, what was it like for you as a foreigner in the United States? And this is several years ago now. So things may be different now, but in the mid 90s, life as a foreign student from Brazil in Boston. What were your first impressions?
Well, I guess, you always come into a situation like that. There's a little bit of a honeymoon period, right? Because you're like so excited about the new thing, and I got, accepted at this important conservatory. I'm going to spend my days practicing my saxophone and all that stuff, and so it was scary, but it was very exciting. And you also, of course, you don't know anything about the culture except for what you see in movies. You don't really know. It's the funniest thing is like I got there And immediately I went to the practice room. I think the first thing I did after I dropped my bags was to go to the practice room because I had this idea that all Americans practiced a lot. Over time, I realized that me and a couple of other people who are some of my friends who became, well established jazz musicians, those were the people who practiced a lot. Nobody else did. Nobody else did. So that was the first
Really?
break in the
Illusion.
ideal illusion of a romantic version of music school in the US. I thought everybody was like fighting for practice rooms and practicing 8 hours a day. And
I think
so,
the pianists were and the violinists, but I don't know about all, the jazz musicians. You guys are kind of on a different vibe.
yeah,
You got to kind of chill out. You can't be a good jazz musician if you're all highly strung and anxious all the time. You got to be chill.
well, I think we sit in between. I don't know about the violinists, but I know the pianists for sure. They practiced a lot. But I think we sit between the pianists and the singers, like right
Oh
in the
yeah,
middle.
we never practiced. We singers are, well, we're famous for being slackers, but we have to sing in foreign languages. So, we do make up for it a little bit in the foreign language department, or at least I always try to. And as you remember, I sang in Brazilian Portuguese in my senior recital, as well as Swedish. And you and your now wife helped me with that. You didn't know that you were going to be married. I don't think you were even dating yet at the time.
I don't think so. I remember it was a really funny thing when she found out that we were friends because she was like, she didn't expect us to be friends. I think it was a bit of a crisis for her.
Quick story about Felipe's wife. So, Felipe's wife is a violinist, classical violinist, who also studied at the New England Conservatory of Music, and she's also a foreign student. She is from Finland. And I think she came in a couple of years after us. I think she started in 96 or 97.
She
And
transferred.
she and I ended up in a solfege class together. We're going to have a few reminiscences in this episode, just as a fair warning. Solfege, if you don't know what solfege is, if you're not a musician, solfege is basically the art of sight reading music, singing it at sight, and being able to see a note and see a progression of notes and sing them as in the correct way without hearing them first. And it's very, very hard for us singers because we don't have an instrument with buttons on it. We don't have keys, we don't have strings. We intuit the notes of our instrument. They just kind of come out in a much more organic, less mechanical way. And so if a classical singer has not had training on an actual physical instrument like the violin or the piano or the saxophone, it can be very, very difficult for us if we haven't had solfege training, which most of us haven't, to then go into this sight reading. And that's the first thing. And the second thing is that singers start. See, this is what I always will defend my fellow singers. We start way later. You instrumentalists, you start at like 5 or 6. We start maybe at 14 if we're lucky, like when our voices start to develop. So we have less time. So I end up with Laura in solfege class, and she has like skipped through the first 3 years because she was so good, and she's already in like the third year class. And I'm like in my fourth year, but I'm in like remedial solfege because I have failed so many times. So I'm behind, she's ahead, and we're in this class together. And as far as she can tell, I am a complete idiot. I'm just an idiot because I'm so bad at solfege. But meanwhile, Felipe and I are close friends, going out dancing a lot. Felipe is a great dancer, salsa, samba, etc. And eventually, Felipe and Laura get together, and she discovers that her boyfriend is friends with this dumb girl in solfege class. And she is a bit shocked by that. But the moral of the story, the end of the story, is that Laura and I ended up becoming friends. And I went and visited her in Finland. So, stranger things have happened. But to get back to what I was saying was, I was singing Villa Lobos and Sibelius in my senior recital and some other stuff. And she was helping me out with the Swedish pronunciation because all Finns speak Swedish, and you were helping me out with the Portuguese stuff. So that was just a funny memory. But yes, that was a very long tangent. But what we were talking about was your first impressions of Boston. Did America live up to your expectations in other ways besides the amount that people practice?
I think it was in a certain way, I think I met a bunch of people who kind of had a little bit of the what do you expect from the movies. My first girlfriend was a little bit of like a cheerleader type, and then there were all those jock guys, and it was weird because they were also in classical music. It was a weird combination, but it was Boston was more of the shock, because Boston is a very white city. I don't know if nowadays, maybe less now, but it was a very racist city when I moved there. So
Really?
I realized much later. I mean, I wasn't used to being discriminated, but then after a while, it's like, what's going on here? Is this people treating me like crap because I have an accent or this and that? I mean, you don't know how I look now. I'm gray, but I had completely black hair and a goatee. I looked a lot more Latino than I look now. Of course, I also probably had a tan back then, which I lost over the years. But it was shocking to me because in my country I'm like the whitest person there is, and all of a sudden I get to the U.S. and I discover that to American standards I'm not white.
Huh.
It was very strange. It took me a while. When I moved to New York, it was different. New York is a very diverse city, but Laura, my wife, says that she loved Boston, and I said, well, of course you loved Boston. You were like a tall Scandinavian blonde lady. You obviously didn't get the same treatment as me, but we have this thing where I always joke, I never liked Boston, and she loved Boston, and so on and so forth.
I didn't realize that you didn't like Boston.
No, I did not. I mean, I
Really?
tried. I really tried.
What year did you guys graduate, more or less?
The funny thing is, I graduated in 98, and that's when Laura started. So we were never in college at the same time. And
Ah,
so what happened, I met Laura when I was playing a gig, and Monica, who's also our, common
mutual
friend,
friend. Yeah.
came to my gig and brought Laura with her, and that's how we met. But we
Oh
never
my
went to
gosh.
school at the same time. It's a very weird thing. And then to make it more interesting, then we moved to New York. She went to Manhattan School of Music, and when she graduated, I started my doctorate there. So we were in both at the same schools, never at the same time,
That is
ever.
funny. I want to talk about you winning the green card lottery. And if that sounds like I'm making a euphemism, that's actually not a euphemism. That's a real thing. And you won it. I mean, it's just so crazy. When we were hanging out in Boston, I remember you showing me a binder that you had with all the articles about you and your work, acclaim that you had gotten, because you were working towards getting a artist's visa, I assume. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, so this is a good conversation. Things have changed a lot now, as we know.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
But back in the day when I went to school, I came with a student visa. And after you finish a degree, the U.S. I don't know if it's like this anymore, but used to be like this. You could get a 1 year work visa called the practical training. So when I finished school, I got 1 year of practical training. I was legal to work in the US for a year. During that year, I hired a lawyer, an immigration lawyer, and I put together a portfolio of my career. And I applied for what they call an O1 visa, which a lot of people call wrongly nowadays there's this thing that they say the Einstein visa. It has nothing to do with that. It's a visa for people. It's an artist visa, but it's also a work visa for different kinds of people who can prove that they have some kind of quality or some kind of skill that is, extraordinary. And so it would be good for the country to have them.
Mm-hmm.
So I went through maybe three artist visas, separate
Oh,
different
you got
artist
them. You were
visas.
getting them.
Yeah, I did. So the first one, I think my portfolio was something like 300 pages. By the time I was about to apply for the green card, which was 9 years later, I got my green card. I was in the country for 13 years already.
Wow.
So when I was about to apply for the green card, my portfolio was 500 pages or something like that. I remember spending back then nothing was digital, so you had to have two binders to send to the what was the name of it?
DHS?
Yeah, now it's DHS. There was a different name for it, but I had to send them two copies. And I remember I spent something ridiculous like $600 in color copies or something crazy like that because you had to do that. And so I had everything ready. I had already put a deposit with my lawyer to start my green card process. But there was something called the green card lottery back then. I don't think it exists anymore. And if it
Oh,
does
no, I think it
exist,
does. I think it does.
Brazilians are not in it anymore. I was the last year that Brazilians were part
Gosh.
of it because it has to do with how many people of your nationality have immigrated to the country. And if
Okay.
you're a very high number, they take you out of the lottery. They were trying to diversify the culture. So that year that I was preparing for this, Laura comes home one day and says, "Hey, there's this green card lottery. I got the papers. Let's apply separately so we have more chance." And of course, I have a much bigger chance than you because there's a lot less Finns
Right.
here. So there's a lot more openings for Finns. The funny thing is like we were already living in Queens and we were about to move. So I said, "You put your mom's address in Finland and I'll put my dad's address in Brazil in case something happens, probably not. Those letters don't get lost in the mail going to our old address because we didn't know where we were going to end up." Never thought about it anymore, right? And so one day we were getting ready. I had already put the deposit to start my green card process, which was super expensive. I went to the lawyer with Laura. We talked about a bunch of things. One of them was like, what is easier to get married first and then apply, or is there a difference? And the lawyer's like, no, if you were married already, it's going to go a lot faster for her. So we decided to get married. And so I called my dad and I say, hey, we're going to get married. We decided to do it in Boston because most of our friends were there. We had just moved to New York. And then he goes, yeah, I think I'm going to come. You know, he just wanted to come and hang out in the US and buy a computer or whatever. But then, like 2 days later, he calls me up. He's like, there's a package here for you from the American government. You want me to open? I freaked out. I was like, what?
Oh, no.
What is it? Of course, open. I was like, man, did I do something wrong? Yeah. So he opens the package and he's like, well, they're saying that you won some kind of green card lottery. I was like, what? It was the craziest thing. And I was like, I don't believe you. So back in those days, people had faxes, right? He
Right.
faxed that letter from the government.
So what year was this?
The year Laura and I got married, 2002.
Okay.
We got selected. We got the green card. It takes like 6 months to a year. And we had to go to Rio because I had put my address in Brazil.
Oh,
I think my lawyer said because you put your address in Brazil, you could do either here or in Brazil the interview. But in Brazil, it takes a few months. Here it could take a lot longer for your interview to get scheduled. What do you want to do? We're like, let's go to Rio. Let's
yeah.
let's let's get the interview
Always
there.
a good excuse to go to
Yeah.
Rio.
So we did the interview there at the consulate in Rio, and then came back with this package. And when you go in, you show that to immigration. They process you, and in a few days, weeks, your green card, which is not green, by the way, it wasn't
No.
green, comes in the mail, and then basically you're legal resident. You can work, you can do it. You cannot
Permanent,
vote,
right?
though.
You can't vote, but you're
You
permanent
cannot vote.
resident.
Yeah, you're a permanent resident unless you do something and they revoke it, right?
Right.
So then you have to wait 5 years, which we did. So by the time I got my green card, it was 2003.
Okay.
And I was starting my doctorate at Manhattan School, which was amazing because I could actually get a loan, a student loan, because I was now a legal resident.
Oh.
I would have had to turn down my doctoral degree scholarship because I would have to go back to a student visa. And in the student visa, I could not work. So there was no way I could support myself. But it just happened at the right moment to get a loan and everything. It was like
It's
magic.
amazing how sometimes, yeah, those things line up. We've talked about it on this show many times, how sometimes things just line up and all the doors fly open at the same time. And it's important to be ready to go through those doors when that happens. As Katie likes to say. Okay, I think that people who don't ever go through the process of living abroad, the experience of living in a foreign country, they don't have any idea what foreigners go through. Because I'm just sitting here as you tell this story, and I'm thinking, all this time, I'm just this little American girl who I don't have to think about this stuff. I don't have to think about visas. I don't have to think about work permits. I don't have to think about, am I allowed to work? Am I not allowed to work? I just show up, I just do my thing. And that's the case for, all the people who are native born citizens, wherever they are. And, you are not only doing your whole education process and practicing and working on your career, but you're also having to handle all of this. I'm constantly impressed by all expats, immigrants, people who move abroad with what they are able to accomplish that is so often behind the scenes. And so often people don't see all of that struggle and all of that hard work. And you're doing it as someone who's not even from there. Like how did you even know as a 20 something Brazilian guy, how did you even know that you could apply for this artist visa? And I mean, it's a lot.
I think a lot of it is once you're in the community, like I played with a lot of foreign musicians. So you start talking to people
Hmm.
and they're like, and you're like, the moment you say, I don't know how I'm going to stay here, then the information starts flowing. I had friends who had done the artist visa, they had a good lawyer. I got the lawyer, so
Yeah.
it's a community. It's a lot easier nowadays though, but
I don't know that it's easier. As you were telling that story, I just thought about people today who, without going into too much politics on our show, we try not to, but people today who might be going about what you attempted and accomplished, but doing it today as a foreign person living, as a foreign black or brown person living in the United States, maybe a professional musician. There seemed, at least from the outside, to be so much more peril for immigrants, even legal immigrants in the United States right now. And, just one wrong turn, one mistaken address on a form could make everything crumble, or even no mistakes, just
yeah.
even following all the rules.
No, I think you're right. I mean, when I said it's easier, is the information flow is easier because now you have social media, you have all
Hmm.
kinds of, so you see all the time like lawyers, immigration lawyers, and do this, don't do that. But yeah, of course, it's gotten a lot worse. I probably might not have gotten all the things that I was able to do today. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah. Now, how long after you got your green card did you become a U.S. citizen?
5 years. I don't know if that changed either, but after 5 years, you can apply for citizenship, which takes about 6 months to a year. Which basically, I mean, the first, for you to have an idea, the first form, I remember you have to list every instance that you left the country, where you went, for how long. And I was a touring musician, so
Oh my gosh. You were traveling a
I
ton.
had to add, yeah, I had to add a few pages to
Wow.
that form, and then you have to provide
Proof?
photocopies of all your visas and your. I mean, you basically take pictures of all your passports and shows all the stamps,
Mm-hmm.
and all that stuff. Then, if everything goes okay, you have a test interview
Right.
where you
Right.
go and they ask you a bunch of stuff that you have to memorize, how many people in Congress, whatever. It used to be
Probably more than
really,
the average American knows, like native born would know,
certainly.
or at least high school student, but probably adult as well. Did you have to take a test for Laura to get her citizenship, or was she already, since she had a green card, her citizenship did not depend on you, I
No,
guess?
because we were married by the time I got the green card.
That's cool because I know there is a test. I've heard about it when you get citizenship through marriage and they ask you things like describe the pillows on your bed. What does it look like on the nightstand? What does your partner have on their nightstand? What do you have on your nightstand? All this stuff. But I've never talked to someone who's actually taken that test. So,
Oh, but we actually had something similar because when we went for the interview for the green card and we were recently married, the lawyer said to us, never, ever answer for your partner. So the guy is looking at our papers and the forms and everything and our marriage license or whatever certificate. And he would ask her questions and me questions and at some point like he's just flipping through pages and looking down and then he says my name and he goes, Felipe, what is your wife's date of birth? He didn't even look at me. Like he just what like he wanted to surprise. And for a moment I blanked out. I was
oh
like,
no.
oh my God. And then I said it, of course, because I know him. There was a moment where he was going to try to get me or get her.
Right.
And he certainly tried.
Okay, well, let's pause for a moment and take a quick break. Imagine one of your friends, someone you really like to spend time with, calls you up and says, "Want to come to Rome with me?" Not only that, she says, "I'm going to plan everything. All you have to do is book your flight. I will find us an amazing hotel to stay in. I will plan every single day out to make sure we see some of the most incredible sights in the city. I'll make sure we have a knowledgeable tour guide to take us around and explain the amazing things that we're seeing. I'll organize a rooftop aperitivo with a view of the city at sunset for our first night. I'll arrange a meal. I'll even get us a chauffeured car to drive us into town from the airport. All you have to do is show up." What would you do? Would you jump at the chance? That is what Katie and I are offering. We like to think that we are, in a way, your friends. We hope that if you listen to this show, that means you'd like to spend time with us, you enjoy our company. And we are offering something really special that we believe is different from any other organized trip to Rome that is out there. It is 6 days of exploration, discovery, history, beauty, joy, pleasure in an amazing location, one of the most beautiful hotels in the city. And we go deep. We're not afraid to go deep. We will take you every single day of the trip on a 3-hour walking tour that will delve into some of the mysteries, and we'll introduce you to some art and some artists that you probably wouldn't have discovered on your own. We'll take you to areas of the city that will feel like you're in a small town. You won't feel like you're in the crowded, bustling city that you might see on social media, but rather you'll be walking down narrow cobblestone alleys that only the locals know about. We will share with you all of our favorite restaurants, bars, cafes, and ice cream shops. We will spend a couple of really memorable meals together. And most importantly, we'll get to know each other with the backdrop of this amazing city. If that sounds like something you're interested in, it's happening the first week of November this year, 2026. Email us at bittersweetlifepodcast@gmail.com if you want to know more. We will be happy to answer all of your questions. And you can also visit our website, thebittersweetlife.net, which has a lot of additional information. We only have 4 rooms left on this trip because it's a very, very small, intimate group. Don't be surprised if by the end of the trip, not only have you gotten to know Rome extremely well, but you might have some new friends too. So get in touch with us soon. We can't wait to take you to Rome. Okay, so you guys have been citizens since 2008 or 9?
Yeah, it was an interesting thing because we got it at the end of 2008. And I remember that because you get a paper, like a certificate of naturalization, and it had George Bush's signature on it. But at that point, Obama had already been elected, you know?
Right.
And I remember how we were like, oh, we want an Obama signature, whatever. Laura had worked on the campaign and everything. And then in 2009, we had our kid. And so she was born a citizen.
That's great. Not just a citizen because she was born in the US, but also born to American parents. And I mean, at the time, that was probably not even a consideration. But today, sadly, that is something that me as a parent, I would think about.
Right.
So you have two kids. How old are they now?
She's going to turn 17 at the end of July, and Luca is 12. It's crazy,
It
right?
is
How
crazy.
old is your kid?
Aurelio is going to be 10 in August. Oh, he's going to be
10.
11. Jeez, he's going to be
11, yeah.
11. I just can't
I
believe it
know.
myself. Yeah, it is crazy. I haven't seen you and your family since you came to Rome. Aurelio was 2. So it was like 9 years ago.
You guys came to a weird gig that I played outside in the middle of the street or something. They brought the piano out of the bar. Remember that?
It was
To
in
the
Piazza,
street.
yeah. It was in Piazza Vittorio, which is kind of like the international area of Rome. And it was cool. I enjoyed it. So I've always been fascinated by the language and cultural climate that must exist in your home because you've got Brazilian dad, Finnish mom, American kids who are also, do they have, I mean, I assume they have Brazilian and Finnish citizenship. How does it work?
They do.
Do they have all three?
Yes.
3 passports?
Hmm.
That's so cool.
And very expensive to renew.
Oh, I
I
bet.
remember the year that we actually traveled with both kids that we actually had to either get the first passport or renew a passport. I mean, renewing a passport back then was $100. And so between Laura's passports, my passports, and the kids' passports, we had 10 passports to
Oh
renew.
my God. Oh my God.
Yep.
Crazy. Now, but you also are an Italian citizen, am I right? Or you're working on
I'm
it
working on it. I have a lawyer who's filed the paperwork, and I'm waiting for my number, whatever process number.
to be called up?
Well, basically, now it's in the process, and then I'll get a process number, and then you just wait until he goes in front of the judge, and then the judge grants you the. But I have a
So
cousin
it's
who already did it, you know,
okay. Is it your
and
grandparent or great grandparent?
it's my great grandparents on my
Okay. Well,
father's side.
I think they recently changed the law. So you probably just got in. Just again, just got in at the right time, right
They
place and right
changed.
time.
They changed, but then it got
It got overturned.
overturned. Yeah.
Right. That's right. Now I remember.
But my lawyer said there's like 3 different ways you can apply for this thing, and the law would only like keep you from doing one way or something. I don't know. Lawyers know a lot of stuff, you know.
You could even go for the Finnish passport. I mean, hey, if you're collecting passports,
See, it's a
you.
little bit different there because you have to live in Finland
Ah, I see.
for 6 or 7 years, and you have to take a language test.
Oh my
Which
God,
my
Finnish is so
Finnish
hard.
is not that good yet, but I work on it every day. Recently, I started seriously working on my Italian, so I don't want to be the guy who has an Italian passport and doesn't speak Italian.
Italian is way easier than Finnish. Not that I've ever studied Finnish, but I've heard that it's the hardest, like one of the hardest languages in the world to
It
learn.
is.
So what, when you were raising little kids, when you had little kids in the house, what language did they speak? Did they favor a particular language? Did things change when they went off to school? I want to hear about the language aspect because I'm fascinated by languages and I know our listeners are too.
So Laura and I had a very clear objective, which was to teach our languages. You know, I've seen lots of Brazilians do this thing that they don't speak Portuguese to their kids. I think it's absurd, you know. But a lot of people are not interested in their culture or they want to be part of the new thing, you know, the new culture, but I think it's a disservice to your kids. So Laura and I had done some research. The way to do that is that you never speak another language to your kid. The moment you start doing that, you break the social contract that exists between you and your kid. So it was a lot easier with Bia. And the way we did most of the time is, of course, I spoke Portuguese only, Laura spoke Finnish only. And until she went to daycare, the only movies and stories and books that she read were either in Finnish or in Portuguese. So when she got to daycare, she didn't speak any English. And so it took her a little bit of time to get used. That we used to send like a list of words so they would know what she was trying to say. And in the beginning, it was really cute. She had a little bit of an accent in English. But then, obviously, English became the main language. But I think her first language was Finnish because she was at home with Laura a lot in the beginning. And I was working a lot. And then Portuguese, of course, because I would come home and spend a lot of time talking to her. And then English when she went to school. Luca went to school a lot earlier. So he went through the process of speaking already in daycare. He speaks Finnish very well. Portuguese, he's a lot lazier to speak. Even though he understands and can speak, a lot of the times when I speak Portuguese, I always speak Portuguese with him, but then he will answer in English. But Bia always speaks either Finnish or Portuguese, but they tend to speak Finnish to each other.
If they're alone together.
Yeah.
See, that is what I have wondered about because I only have one kid. He doesn't have a choice. If he's with me, he's speaking English. If he's with his dad, obviously he's speaking Italian, but we only have the two languages. We don't have a third language, in our little world yet anyway. He is about to start Spanish in middle school, but that doesn't really count. It's not a native language of any of us. But I always wondered, as much as you try as a parent to get your kid to speak a certain language, if you have two and they speak together and they choose to speak, let's say, the local language, then how do you stop that? But luckily, you guys did not have to worry about that.
We do. We had to stop. We basically, every time we catch them speaking English to each other, we stop them.
You stopped them?
Yes,
wow.
Yeah.
So you guys were very, very proactive. I was the same. I, like you, I know a lot of people in my situation here in Italy who are, one parent is English or American and the other parent's Italian, and they're in Italy and their kid does not speak proper English. And I don't think it's because they don't care about their culture. I think it's laziness. I think it's just so easy to let the child respond in the local language, because this is what happened with so many of my friends. They would speak English to their kid, but the kid would respond in Italian because it was easier for them. And the parent didn't insist upon the child responding in English. And as much as that kid understands English, can comprehend it, they don't have the fluency to speak it, and they have accents. And I cannot believe how many of my friends' kids who are American or English have Italian kids, half Italian kids, who speak English with an accent.
Yeah, but I think there's more than just part of it is laziness, but I think is also the kid is going to speak the local language, is going to try to speak the local language because the kid doesn't want to be different. What we did is early on, we really taught our kids to be proud of being from a different culture, speaking a different language. This is like a superpower that they have, and it's not like something that makes them the other, it's something that makes them better than the other, So Bia just got her, I don't know if that was existed when you went to high school, but there's something now called the seal of biliteracy, where you can take a test. If you pass this test, you get a second literacy in another language certificate, because you obviously get a certificate in English literacy because you're speaking English all the time. So I think they don't know for sure, but the principal was like, I think you're the first person in the school who has two seals of biliteracy, because she got one in Finnish and one in Portuguese.
That is
So
super cool. And so do they feel Finnish? Do they feel Brazilian?
They do, but they also feel American. Like
Well, of course.
there was a time when we talked about what if we have to move somewhere. Obvious reasons, the climate is not really exciting for people who are not from here. And as you already talked on your show, lots of people leaving, and I thought about that. What if I get a teaching job in Europe? And the kids don't really want to go. They are very critical of this country, but they are like, my friends are here, my culture is here. I grew up American, and I mean, it's kind of scary, for me. Like when they talk to us is one thing. When they talk to their friends, it's like they change to a different personality.
Really?
They're a lot more American. you
Huh.
know, the whole lingo and the generational stuff, of course. But it's kind of interesting because, languages, it's like when you speak fluently several languages, it's a little bit like you have different personalities. Each
Absolutely.
language has a different memory, right? A different emotional memory. There's a whole series of things that are very different. But the emotional thing is changes. I have connections with Brazil. I go there and I start talking about things here, and I don't feel like I'm making much sense. They don't. There's so many things embedded in the language, not just emotional, but also the culture and the way the cultural references exist. It's very complicated. So when you have like two or three languages, you have like two or three personalities. Also, bilingual kids, they're much better at understanding abstract concepts
Huh.
because kids who only know one language, it takes them a while to understand that the word and the object are not the same thing. But when you have two words for one object, you
Ah,
clearly understand. And my kids never mixed languages either. It was
never.
really funny because they would be quiet and they would wait to hear what the person would say to know what language to speak with them.
Huh. Aurelio mixes English and Italian all the time. Not, he always knows what language to speak to someone, but he uses Italian words. He peppers Italian words into his English all the time. Because there
Oh,
are certain words that he just doesn't, he knows what the word is in Italian, in English, but it's just not a word that he uses regularly. Like compiti, for example, that means homework. Have you done your compiti? Yeah, I did my compiti. It's always,
yeah.
we never say homework. It's always compiti. Or I want to go play calcio. I want to go play soccer. So he has those words. And when he was really little, I don't know if your kids ever did this, but he would put like an English verb ending on the end of an Italian verb. Like he would
Right.
say, I'm beving the water instead of I'm drinking, I'm beving. Bevo is Italian for
Yeah.
I drink and things like that. Did your kids ever do that?
No, but we used to do that as a funny thing. We would do a phrase where we mix the three languages together as a joke, and they would
Yeah.
find it hilarious. Like we would come up with the
I mean,
weirdest,
it's
weirdest combinations.
they are three very, very different cultures and languages. You can't get three more distinct cultures, really, unless you were to go to maybe Asia or Africa. But I mean, they're so diverse, like Finland and Brazil. I mean, like, can you get more culturally far apart than Finland and Brazil? And to see a child who embodies at the same time those two cultures and the American culture is pretty fascinating.
But I mean, culturally, yes. But I have lots of friends in Finland, and I find Finnish people to be quite loyal as friends. It takes a little time to get to know them or to break the ice. I find it, actually refreshing how honest and loyal they are as friends. I don't know. I mean, I've never felt like it was that different. Of course, I don't know how to explain. It's like I've always joked with Laura. We always say that the only way our relationship would work was in America because it was like the middle ground between the Finnish side and the Brazilians.
True. And what's your common language? What language do you guys speak together?
English because that's
English.
that's how we met. Although Laura can speak Portuguese, I cannot speak fluent Finnish. I can speak 1-year-old Finnish, But she can speak fluent Portuguese. But that our whole emotional attachment and relationships is in English. It's always been in English. So
Right, right. Okay, last question. When are we going to get you back in Europe? When are we going to get you to move to Europe? What would it take?
we thought about it. And the sad thing, and this is one thing about immigrating to another country, when you do it in your 20s and you spend 30 years there, you're building something that is not that easy to change. For example, I have a job at the university. I've been there for 16 years. I've been teaching college for 20 years, I have a pension investment. I have all those things. I got offered to apply for a job in Austria at an amazing school. And then I started talking to the guy, and he's like, well, how old are you? And, so we calculated that because Austria has a mandatory retirement age, I would not make a pension in Austria. So it's a lot more complicated
It
than
is.
wanting to do, I feel like at the point that I am, it's like when I move somewhere else, it will probably be in my retirement. I don't have the time to rebuild what I've built here.
I do understand that. I totally get that. Well, Felipe, it has been such a delight to have you on the show,
Great to
and
be.
I'm so glad that we got to catch up. Where can everybody out there find you? Do you have a CD out that's recent? Anything like that?
Yes, although people don't buy CDs anymore, I
Oh, I know.
heard.
I just dated myself again.
Yeah, I have a website. I mean, basically my hook on most things, Instagram and YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, I have an Instagram page, I have a Facebook page where nobody goes to anymore. Um,
We'll put those all in the show notes.
and they're all the same. It's Salles, which is my last name, Salles, Jazz, Jazz. So salesjazz.com is my website, and then in Instagram, if you put there Salles Jazz, you find me, and so on and so forth. But there's tons of videos. I actually have 12 records to date.
Wow. Well, thank you again so much for joining us. It has been so much fun. I'm Tiffany Parks. Join us again. Bye.
You should come to Rome with us, but you don't have to take my word for it. Why not hear from a few people who have been on the tour? Maybe they'll help you decide.
It was just one of the best weeks I can recall. It was a week of education and pleasure, of course. Tiffany, extraordinary guide, knowledgeable. Oh my God, it's unbelievable what you keep in that brain of yours. And then Katie always does such a wonderful job of things. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. It was just a great week.
This was really an amazing week. I really feel like we got to see so many things that most tourists probably don't see in Rome. All the little secret places, so much history, and just so much depth of knowledge. Our hosts, Tiffany and Katie, are really amazing, and their knowledge of Rome is amazing. And even beyond the tours, we got a whole booklet of great places to eat, great places to see, walking tours. It was such a fantastic trip, and I'm just so glad I came.
I came on this trip not knowing what to expect at all. It's exceeded my expectations by a million miles. Took me by surprise about how emotional and how fun it was. And I met such a group of lovely people, and we had a great time all together, and I highly, highly recommend doing this trip.
I've had the most special week here in Rome, and I really think it is very attributable to Tiffany and Katie. I think the magic of this trip was the fact that you had the two women who are just fantastic at what they do. We have Katie, who I like to think of as the glue, right? She brings this thing together. She's also the oil, right? She's the one that makes no friction, right? Things flowed smoothly. She was able to make sure everything happened in a flawless manner. And her partner here, Tiffany, is just magnificent at weaving a story. So not only does she talk about the dates and the people and the painters and the different talented artists here in Rome, she's able to give you a story around them and really evokes real images of what that situation was like, how those people created those things, in what years, and what things were going on in those times. So I think it was quite the magical week.
If you want more information, reach out bittersweetlifepodcast@gmail.com or visit our website, thebittersweetlife.net.